It's funny how I technically labeled this as a gaming channel because all of my video footage is gaming content, and now I'm finally deciding to make a gaming video. And yes, this will be a type of video of, oh, I remember the good old days. So in recent news, Call of Duty announced that they're going to port, not remaster, Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 onto the PS5. And they're charging $40 per game. Now, I'm not going to comment much on how that insane that is, but all I can say is COD is so creatively bankrupt that they can no longer come up with original game titles. And their most popular tweet they published this year was a half-ass attempt to remaster two games that are over 15 years old. Anyways, this announcement made me put on my thinking cap, and it made me think back to the good old days. In the magical era of the 90s and the 2000s, gaming was very much a novelty. During these times when you played video games, you were considered a nerd like me. And studios had to literally prove themselves and had to work extra hard to stand out versus the competition. This was the time where we had console wars and version exclusives, and those were like a real thing because you had companies like Sega, Nintendo, Sony, whoever owned Xbox back then, all competing at the same exact time for your money. And creating games back in the day, it was literally creating art because studios had more time and less resources to create memorable experiences. And what resulted in this was not just three good games every year, but three good games per console, per studio, every single. The creative approach that I could describe what studios did back then versus what it is now is risk taking and risk aversion. So back in the day, studios practiced a lot of risk, took a lot of risk in creating good games and more memorable experiences. And that resulted in a lot of terrible games. But through all the garbage, you had gold. Nowadays, at most, you'll get 1 to 3 new good games every year. And those are usually from the indie studios or the medium-sized studios who actually took a risk. All the other gaming studios, the bigger studios, they just followed the meta formula. Going back to play older games, retro titles versus the newer titles, I think the biggest difference between the older games and the new games is the amount of attention to detail devs used to put in older games. Also, them having you immersed in their world. A lot of older gamers often complain that newer games tell you where to go or what to do. And when newer games do that, I think you lose the essence of being immersed in the game's world. Remember when you played that old game and you were literally laser focused on passing a level or finding something specific to get to the next phase of the game? I think the creators of Metroid are masters at this because the game virtually tells you almost nothing. And whether you're playing the 2D format or the 3D format, every piece of the game when you level up Samus or you're discovering new areas, it's just discovery and immersing yourself into the world. Like if modern day creators created Metroid, I would guarantee you would get NPCs along the line telling you where to go. There's probably easy mode, stuff like that, where I don't want to make it into a dichotomy of like, oh, gaming is easier now than it was before, but more so the immersion into the world is fundamentally different. Now, now as for why this design choice is largely changed in modern gaming, is because modern gaming is sort of viewed like movies and television now. It's mainstream. And when you have a mainstream audience, you have to make games more accessible. And what I mean by that is, you'll have to tell people where to go. You'll have to tell people what to do. I feel like games back in the day, the game represented what it was. It would show what it was, and then you had to essentially enter in that world. Nowadays, games feel like they have to cater to people. Like we have to cater to you, the audience, for you to like the game rather than the other way around. And I think when games do that, they lack a lot of the character and the immersion that is needed to make a memorable game. More importantly, when now since gaming is mainstream, larger studios own games. And when big studios own and create games, there's less incentive to take risk. More importantly, bigger studios tend to overwork their developers, so less time is actually put into refining the game or making it more memorable experience in terms of atmosphere, story, gameplay design. Bigger studios tend to have tougher deadlines, again, putting more pressure on the people who actually make the games, the developers. So, how can a mainstream studio find return on investment? Well, you just copy your competition. In 2017-18, Rockstar and Nintendo completely redefined the open world gaming genre with Breath of the Wild and Red Dead 2. What did we get after that? A long list of games that tried to copy that formula. And the only studio that really took this formula and created something arguably original was Form Software with Elden Ring. In between 2018 and the release of Elden Ring in 2022, what did we had? Many duds. And I think the best example of this is whatever Ubisoft tried to make in between. The same studio that made Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell completely conformed to this meta and created terrible derivatives of open world games. Now I'm going to move on from something that's more objectively bad things that we deal with modern gaming and it's less opinionative. Gaming now is becoming an insanely expensive hobby, especially in the world where everything seems to cost an arm and a leg now. If you build a PC, parts are ridiculously expensive now, and they always have been. Um, Console prices and game prices are at an all-time high. And even when you break the bank to get your gaming system and the game, lazy studios are made the user experience as unpleasant as humanly possible. Most games take an unimaginable amount of space to have downloaded on your system. Gaming studios like Activision purposely do this, allegedly, to discourage players from deleting the games and to literally monopolize the limited disk space you have in your gaming system. Allegedly. Meaning, if you have Call of Duty downloaded, chances are you won't have many other games downloaded. And to pour salt on the wound, buying extra storage space like an SSD or hard drive is also very freaking expensive. Then you have those AAA games that always launch with server issues, bugs, or if you're a PC player, bloated graphics that stress your hardware, anti-cheat software that could stress your PC. If you have to download a game launcher, if that's not set up properly, that's gonna slow your PC down, packet loss, all these things that completely ruin your experience. And even let's say the game is polished, that is not to address the exploiters or cheaters, and gaming studios like Embark, who are too slow to respond meaningfully to cheaters. Arc Raiders is a great example of a game that was quickly being ruined by cheaters, and a large number of the player base have left. Now, assuming a new game has none of the defects I have mentioned over the past 2 minutes, we don't even own games anymore, especially offline games that require internet connection. The most notable example of this is when Ubisoft pulled the crew off servers and off the game store and literally stopped people who paid full price for the game that is mostly offline stop playing it. And when they got sued for it, their literal argument was, well, actually, you guys just paid for the license of the game. Now, I'm not gonna be a video game unk and be like, oh, there's no good games anymore. There are still objectively good games and studios that make objectively good games that they actually put care into and work properly. I would be lying to you if I said there weren't any good games. It's just nowadays the mainstream gaming space, they no longer, the big studios are no longer making all the best games. Um Even like examples where studios are that medium-sized studios that are now big studios, like Firm Software was a medium-sized studio at one point, but they became popular because they created one of the best games of all. Like there's very few major studios that are still creating good games nowadays, like Nintendo, Rockstar, Capcom. But that list is getting smaller and smaller with every passing year. Now that I'm an adult, I have a gaming supercomputer, I have a Steam Deck, I have access to literally most games ever, and there's games I've never even played that I'm playing for the first time that thanks to modern technology I now have access to. So realistically, I should be in the best gaming era of my life. But I realize as I'm getting older, much of my intention is getting away from gaming. I realize I can no longer recapture the same feeling I shared in my youth. And now that I'm getting older, I often reminisce. I don't know, I think that's just me. But y'all don't miss owning physical copies of games?
It's crazy I said that because as I'm recording this video, PlayStation literally announced that they're no longer doing physical copies of games ever.
One of my favorite things to do is to go to retro gaming stores. Shout out to ANC Studio Games, a beautiful retro gaming store on Spadina in downtown Toronto. I literally spent 2 hours there just looking at old school games, playing some games, chatting with fellow gamers who had tables set up for trading card games and LAN parties, and chatting with the owners too. I walked out of that store with the fattest smile on my face because I walked out with Pokemon cards and I realized I recaptured all of the same feelings I used to have when I was a kid. But as I'm getting older, I realize the times have changed. It would be foolish of me to assume the gaming world, or I myself, would be the same in 2007, in 2017, and now in 2026. And me hoping for that same experience I had 10, 15, 20 years ago is just unrealistic. But that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts below, and please be with you all. Take care.